to the greatest nation in the history of all mankind. For here we embraced individual liberty because we believe that God created man to be free. Here we embraced free enterprise because we believe God created man to fulfill their dreams and their potential. Here we embraced a republic because we believe that the job of our leaders is to serve the people and not the people serve the leaders. And the result is this extraordinary nation. A place where our Judeo-Christian values formed our society into a strong one. We became the most generous people in the history of the world. Americans give more to charity than most governments do. Not because the government makes us, not because you get a 60% write-off on your taxes, but because we are taught by our faith, we are commanded by our faith to care for the less fortunate, to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and house the homeless. And the result is an incredible nation. Now, when you are born and raised in a country like I have been, in this one, and you do not know what life is like in any other place, I believe sometimes it's easy to take for granted how special America truly is. But one of the blessings I have had is that I was raised by people that knew what life was like outside of America. And so they always taught me how special life was in America. My parents were both born on the island of Cuba. They came here in 1956 with nothing. They barely spoke English. The first words my father learned in the English language was, "I'm looking for work." My father had not gone to school past the age of 9. His mother died 4 days shy of his 9th birthday. And so he had to go work, and he would never go back to school. He would work for the next 70 years of his life. My mother was one of 7 girls raised by a disabled father in rural Cuba. My mother says her and her sisters never went to bed hungry, but she's sure her parents did many nights. When they came here in 1956, they didn't know anyone. They had few skills. They had big dreams and not much more. And life in America was not an instant success. Years later, my parents admitted to me they struggled. They were discouraged. They wondered out loud whether they had made a mistake. They even contemplated at one point going back to Cuba. I thank God every night they did not. They stayed. They persevered. And less than 10 years after they came here with nothing, my parents owned a home. My father was a bartender on Miami Beach, and they owned a home in a safe and a stable neighborhood. Years would go by, and through hard work, my parents were able to retire with dignity and with security. But the greatest achievement my parents had in life was that they were able to live. They lived to see all 4 of their children live a life better than their own. Their life had meaning and it had purpose. Their sacrifices meant something because they were in the one place on earth where if you work hard and you sacrifice, not only can you achieve a better life, but you can give your kids the chance to be everything you always wanted to be, but never could. And the reason why I say that is because although that is my story, that's not just my story. As Americans, that is our story. There are a lot of people here today. Only a few of you have I ever met in person. I don't know your personal story. And yet I know this. Because you're Americans, you, like me, are just a generation or 2 removed from someone who made your future the purpose of their lives as well. In this country, we are all just a generation or 2 removed from someone like that. Who are Americans? Americans are the descendants of go-getters. Americans are the descendants of people that came here, whether it was 2 centuries ago or 2 years ago, because they refused to live in a society that told them that they could not be who they wanted to be. America is the descendants of slaves who overcame that horrifying institution to claim their stake to the American dream. America is a nation in which in our veins flows the blood of people who refuse to accept the limits placed upon them by a stale and outdated society. This is who we are. This is who we've always been. And this is who we must fight to remain. What we fight for now is that America remains the kind of country where my story and yours is still possible. That is what's at stake here. If we stay on the road we are on right now, we will lose that. The American dream will die. We will still be a rich country. We will still be an important one. But if we lose the American dream, we will no longer be a special one. Because as I said before, every country has rich and connected people. But only here can millions of people that do not come from privilege or power achieve extraordinary things. This is what makes us different. And this is what we must now fight to preserve. If we embrace big government, we will lose it. For in the societies where government dominates the economy, it is the same people who keep winning. I challenge you to look at these countries where the government dominates society and the economy. It's the same families and the same names and the same companies decade after decade. Because big government helps the people who have already made it. Big government is good for the people who can influence government, and everyone else gets left out. And so what we must fight for now is to ensure that that American dream, that it doesn't just survive, but that it reaches more people and changes more lives than ever before. And my fellow Americans, that is what we have a chance to do right now. I know that times are tough, but as Americans, we have been here before. In fact, we have been here many times. You see, one of the reasons why America is so special is because for over 2 centuries, each generation did what they needed to do. This is not a country that ever had it easy. It was founded by declaring independence from the most powerful empire in the world. This is the nation that confronted 2 world wars and a Great Depression. This is the nation that survived the Civil War. This is the nation that survived the 60s that divided us generationally over Vietnam and regionally over civil rights. Each generation has confronted great challenges, and each one rose up to the challenge of their time. Now our moment has come. Now our time has arrived. And I take inspiration from the decision our nation made 36 years ago this year. 36 years ago, I was still a young child. I was only 8 years old, but I was old enough to know that things were not going well. Even as a young child, I could sense that America's optimism had ebbed. I could sense that our influence in the world had declined. I could sense that our confidence in ourselves and in our people was at an all-time low. And then this nation elected a phenomenal president named Ronald Reagan. And just as important as what he did, Reagan influenced the whole generation by what he believed. Reagan always believed that America's greatest days were always in front of us, because he recognized that while our government had big problems, our nation is not a government. America is not a government.